Alright, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on here? Welcome back to another video. And now that the Euro 2020 tournament is over, I thought that in this video I would share which player I think was the best player for every country that participated at the Euros. So let's get into this video, shall we? So the first country that we have was Scotland, and for Scotland this was a pretty historic tournament despite them, not making it out of the group stage. I think that the way how this was historic was that this was finally for the first time in a very long time that Scotland qualified for a major tournament, and despite them not making it out of the group stage, I think that the best player for Scotland was Andrew Robertson without a doubt, so that's the player who I think was the best player for Scotland. Now moving on to England, I personally think that as for England, best player for them without a doubt in this entire tournament would probably have to be Raheem Sterling. I mean, Sterling just absolutely carried this England team very far, and just his abilities are just the reason why I think England made it very far in this tournament, all the way to the final. Now I know that some people are probably going to disagree with me on this, but the way how Sterling played at the tournament, I think he deserves all the credit in the world. Now moving on to the Wales, I personally would have to say that the best player for them in this entire tournament would have to be Gareth Bale, because Gareth Bale was involved in a lot of Wales goals, so that's why I would have to give the title to Bale. Now moving on to the Netherlands, I personally think that the best player for the Netherlands this entire tournament would have to be either Depay or Wijnaldum. However, if I had to pick one, it would definitely have to be Wijnaldum, just because I think that Wijnaldum was just a driving force behind the Netherlands' success in the group stage, just because I think that Wijnaldum is a pretty great version of De Bruyne for the Netherlands, just because of his incredible goal-scoring ability as a midfielder. That's why I would have to give the title to Wijnaldum. Now as for Belgium, I would definitely have to give the title to Lukaku, as he was the top goal scorer for them in this tournament, and Lukaku just absolutely was a driving force behind this Belgium team, especially in their game against Italy where he scored the only goal. That's the reason why I think Lukaku deserves the title of being Belgium's best player, just because he was absolutely crucial for them, just because of the amount of runs that he made and his goal scoring abilities. Without a doubt, it goes to Lukaku. Now moving on to France, I personally would have to pick Kanté, just because I think that out of all the France players that played the best at the tournament, it was without a doubt Kanté, just because I think that Kanté gave off the most consistent performances, and Kanté is just so crucial to that France midfield that I think Kanté deserves the title of also being the team captain for France. I personally think Kanté has what it takes to be the team captain. So if I was France, I would give the title of team captain to N'Golo Kanté. Now that's the way how I see it, so that's why I think Kanté was the best player for France at the Euros. Now as for Spain, I personally would have to give the title to Pedri, just because I think that Pedri without a doubt is going to be a key feature for Spain's midfield, and I think that Pedri had a great tournament, so that's why I give the title to Pedri for Spain. As for Portugal, this is obviously a no-brainer. Cristiano Ronaldo, without a doubt, he was the best player for Portugal in this tournament, and he was a top goal scorer as well, so that's why I give the title to Cristiano Ronaldo. Now moving on to Denmark, I think that Schmeichel deserves the title of being Denmark's best player at the tournament, just because I think that for him as a goalkeeper, he's a big reason why Denmark, I believe, were able to make it to the Final Four in this tournament, hence why I have to give the title to Schmeichel. Now moving on to Germany, I think that Havertz deserves the title for being the best player for him in this tournament, just because Havertz was Germany's top goal scorer. Now moving on to Switzerland, this is of course a no-brainer. I would have to give the title to Shaqiri, just because Shaqiri without a doubt was Switzerland's top goal scorer in this tournament, and Shaqiri just always has those crazy games for Switzerland, hence why I think Shaqiri deserves the title of being Switzerland's best player at the Euros. And moving on to Italy, I would have to give the title to Gigi Donnarumma, especially after his performance yesterday versus England. Man, Gigi Donnarumma deserves the title of being Italy's best player at the tournament. Now as for Austria, I would have to give the title to David Alaba, just because I think that for him as a team captain for Austria, he was absolutely instrumental for them in making it out of the group stages. Now moving on to the Czech Republic, I'd have to say that Schick was their best player in this entire tournament, just because Schick was the Czech Republic's top goal scorer, so the title definitely belongs to Schick. Now moving on to Poland, this is of course a no-brainer, Lewandowski. I just wish that Lewandowski would have a supporting cast, because if only Lewandowski had a supporting cast for Poland, I think that Poland would have made it out of the group stage. So yeah, Lewandowski best player for Poland hands down in this tournament. As for Slovakia, I would have to say definitely Skriniar. I think that Skriniar was their best player in this tournament, just because I think that Skriniar has already established himself as one of the best center backs and one of the best developing center backs in the world. Now as for Hungary, I think that this is a pretty tough thing to decide, but if I had to pick, I'd probably have to say Gulácsi, their goalkeeper, just because I think that Gulácsi had some great performances for Hungary in this group stage. Like his performance against France was really good the way how I see it, and Hungary were playing in the group of death, so I would have to give the title right here to Gulácsi. Now moving on to Croatia, I would have to say without a doubt Luka Modric. Man, Luka Modric without a doubt was Croatia's best player in this entire tournament, especially since he was the main reason why Croatia made it to the group stage. Now moving on to North Macedonia, despite them not making it out of the group stage, I would have to give the title here to Pandev. Now moving on to Turkey, if there was one player that I would have to pick for being Turkey's best player at the Euros, despite them having a very disastrous start for the tournament, it would have to be Kaveci, as he was the only Turkish Turkish player that scored a G at the Euros. Now, as for Ukraine, I would have to give the title here to Yaremchuk, just because I think that Yaremchuk in this Euro tournament has established himself as a very solid player for Ukraine. Now, moving on to Sweden, I would have to give the title here to Emil Forsberg, just because Forsberg was Sweden's most consistent player in this tournament, so hands down, without a doubt, title goes to Forsberg. Now, as for Finland here, despite this being their first and ever tournament, I would have to give the title right here to Hradecki, just because of that penalty save he had against Denmark, so hey, the title goes to Hradecki. Now, as for Russia here, I would have to give the title right here to Miranchuk, just because I think that Miranchuk has established himself as a very solid player for Russia's starting 11. So ladies and gentlemen, this is my list here, so let me know if you agree with me, or if you don't agree with me, just let me know in the comment section below and tell me why. So anyways, ladies and gents, like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for more football videos. Peace.